Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brent Hoskins. I serve as Executive Director of the Business Technology Association, and I'd like to welcome you today to this BTA Building My Business webinar. Today's webinar is How to Sell Your MPS Deals Faster. It will be presented by Derek Shebby, who's founder of Modern Sales Training. Special thanks to Sales Chain, you can see them on the screen there, for sponsoring today's webinar. Sales Chain is a business management software and services company that empowers your digital workforce. With seamless integration to eAutomate, Sales Chain provides intelligent, purpose-built software tailored to service the needs of the BTA channel. So if you have questions along the way, just type them into your Zoom Q&A or chat on your screen, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Derek. Derek?
Hello. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, thanks for joining this webinar. I really appreciate it. Let me advance the slides here. Okay, so for those of you that saw the write-up for this webinar, it really comes down to MPS is such an important part of what we do in this industry. And my background, I'll share more about my background in a minute here, but MPS is something that is alive and well. And from what I've seen out there, just about every dealership has it on their website as something that they provide on a regular basis. But when it comes down to bringing in MPS deals monthly, it's more rare. And so that would make you think, well, are people still buying printers, and are they getting toner? Well, last year in 2020, HP Inc. recorded that they did 13 billion in revenues just in toner sales alone. And that 13 billion is a piece of their overall almost $60 billion in their HP Inc. business. But what was most interesting about it is the 13 billion of revenue, a big chunk of that, we don't really know exactly how much, it represented over 60% of HP Inc.'s total profits. And so who knows how much of that 13 billion is straight profit. So you got to be thinking, if you're not capitalizing on finding ways to sell MPS every single day and fast, then it's just a huge opportunity. And today I'm going to share some tactical things that you can do in your dealership right now to start selling MPS faster. And I'll give you some examples along the way of how I've done this in the field with salespeople, because it's very achievable. So let's get into it. So this is what we're going to talk about. Basically, there's four main sections. The first one we're going to briefly touch on MPS opportunities, and really ask the question: are they the same, and are we being taught to handle them the same way? And I'll give you some ways to challenge that concept of the way that MPS is typically taught out there in the world. So that's the first piece. Then we're going to talk about, what do you need to do in order to sell MPS fast? Because typically the MPS, there's the whole stigma of maybe it taking 30 to 90 days or longer, depending on the size opportunity. But does it really need to be that long? I'll give you some examples on how you can shorten it quite a bit. Then we're going to talk about, now once you know some tactics on how to sell MPS much faster, then we're going to dive in just a couple areas on how you can go after the low-hanging fruit at your dealership, so you can immediately next week use some of the things that I talk about today and capitalize on how much business you can get next week in MPS and not worry about it taking months to do. And then finally, once you have these opportunities from finding the low-hanging fruit, the big thing is, okay, well, what do I do with it, Derek? How do we go and get our customers and get people out there interested in doing MPS? Well, I'll give you some more tactics on how you can get after it and present your case to those companies, so you can get on the board and your salespeople can get on the board with MPS deals next week. So that's it. Then we'll go through some next steps, but let's continue. So briefly about me, that's me in the corner there. I'm from San Diego, and I worked for MRC, previously Mr. Copy. We were the largest Xerox agent in the nation. And then we were purchased by Global Imaging Systems, now XPS. And I was with them for 17 years. I was employee number 30 working for Bob Leone. and I was a top rep for him. I was a top manager for him, and then ended up being part of his team to develop the different locations we had, develop the managers, develop the VPs, and develop the new people. Do all the things, including sell MPS and managed services, all that along the way. And when I left, we were about 500 employees strong. But that's what my background comes from. It's just been in this industry. It's where I've done it on the street like all of you. I know what it takes to win these deals. So Modern Sales Training is the company I started when I left, and I've got three main things that I do with it. The first thing is I have best-selling online sales training courses. So I basically made 12 modular courses that are all around the sales cycle, and I put them online as one package, and they became a bestseller. And right now there's over 20,000 salespeople and teams around the world that are using this course. That's totally 18 hours. And I will actually give you all a sneak peek of it at the end. You'll all get it for free. It's my gift to stay towards the end of this actual webinar and this training. So not only will you be able to sell more MPS at the end, but you'll also get this free course that you could put your entire sales force through. The second thing that I do is along the way, I started helping out small dealers, 3 to 10 million in size, specifically help with strategies on things that we did at MRC over the years to grow. And I've been working with them individually in one of my groups called the CDO. And the last thing I have is something called the Corporate Sales Training Program, where I help dealers around the nation as well that don't necessarily have a sales training or enablement team, and I can help be the outsourced sales trainer for their newer people. So those are things that I do today, but it's all based upon this industry and what you're all in. So I'll be speaking with the terminology that you're all familiar with. But let's start the presentation. So the question here is, are all MPS opportunities the same? And this is so important because over the years, I'm sure many of you have been through quite a bit of MPS training, for yourself and for your teams, thinking that's all it takes to get more MPS deals being sold. But then you look at the revenues, you look at the number of deals sold every single month, and you see that whatever, if you sell between 10 to 50 deals, there's probably a small portion of that, very small, maybe under 10%, that include MPS or MPS standalone deals. And it shouldn't be that way. And if we're taught how to sell MPS, there should be a whole lot more MPS deals sold. And it comes back down to how it's actually taught. So this situation right here is pretty much where you start with MPS. You start with Spotter, and you start with how do you find the right type of company to sell MPS. And a lot of times you exaggerate, and it's, well, you're looking for these 500 employee organizations, 100 plus printers, 20 plus MFPs, multiple locations. And sure, if I imagine you all could probably count, maybe on two hands how many of those you have in your territory, as much as you'd like to believe. There's just sometimes, depending on where you are regionally, you just might not have that many of those opportunities. And absolutely, these sort of accounts, they probably do have MPS right now, and they might not be that opportunity. So you think, okay, if we don't have those, then we don't have MPS, because the other opportunities look like this. They look like this sort of office right here. And I imagine many of you probably have seen some of these riding with your reps and your salespeople, and just in the past month, saying, this is where we're trying to go sell an MFP and MPS. And those could be anywhere from 10 to 20 employees. And maybe 5 printers, probably more like 5 instead of 5 to 10, but 5 is probably more realistic. And 1 MFP. And it's a single location. This looks more like what we see out there, right? This is the business. Maybe not specifically looking like this, but if we're looking 10 to 20 employees, small number of printers, and 1 to 2 MFPs, that's pretty much what's out there. And that's where the MPS business really is. So what is the process for each opportunity? And this is where the big challenges happen with development to teach people how to do MPS. So what you'll see right here, again, we got this large opportunity, and you're probably very familiar with having some sort of checklist or a scope of work to use along the way to get these MPS deals. and I got it in here. You'll see an example checklist that I created for my the CDO membership that I have, but it all follows the same structure where you got to sell the assessment, right? You sell the assessment, you be consultative, you got to follow the process, never skip steps, right? You skip a step, probably not going to get the deal. And it involves all the normal things like loading the app, whatever app you're using. FM Audit's probably the king there, but something to track the prints, collecting all the costs, meeting with the right people, getting all the data, doing the walkthroughs right, interviewing the people, understanding how they're using the tech, basically being a consultant. And then you map it and then you validate everything with them. Now, look, if you're dealing with these large accounts, you absolutely have to do it this way. Because if you don't, all the other mega dealers out there, they know how to do this really well, and they'll beat your dealership because they'll follow this structure. And it's absolutely important for you to understand how to do major account selling for MPS. But everything else, it's a little different. It doesn't really follow this, does it? And I'll give you an example. So one of the last reps that I worked with before I left Xerox, they came to me one morning and they said, hey, Derek, I'm sorry it's not working out. I'm just not, I'm not closing any deals. And I said, well, how much have you closed? And he said, well, I've been here 4 months and I've only brought in 0, no deals. And so he says, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And I said, I didn't understand. And I said, but you got the right attitude and you did well in your development. And what happened out there? And he says, I don't know, my managers just don't think I can cut out for it anymore. And I don't either. And I got a family to support. So I went to his managers and I said, what's going on? And they said, well, he can't close. And I said, well, that's your responsibility to get in there and show him how to do it. And so I basically said, I'm going to show you guys how to do this right. And so I cleared my calendar and told this rep, I'm going to work with him every day until he gets a deal. And so we started working, and in the first week, we, in the morning we get together and we plan for the day, and then we'd go execute. And obviously it's prospecting mainly throughout the whole day. And he was mainly a net new rep pretty much. And he had a couple accounts, but we worked every day and every night preparing for the next day. And on Friday that week, we closed his first deal. Guess what it was? An MPS only contract at a net new account. And so we did that in a matter of days, just a couple days. And so then we decided to keep it going. I'm like, well, we've already created all these prospects for the last 4 days. Let's keep it going. So we worked together for 3 weeks straight, every day. And in those 3 weeks, this rep that was about to quit, that had 0 written in 4 months, that his managers were saying were awful, ended up closing from those 3 weeks of us working together, 8 deals. 7 of them were MPS only contracts, MPS only, and 7 of them were net new. And so we ended up getting 1 current customer account, but the total revenue for him was around $95K in equipment revenue and $1,400 in print. So $1,400 in MPS. And it was in those moments that I really solidified the fact that the way that we teach MPS is too complicated, and it's not realistic. We're not going to these large, huge opportunities every single day and thinking, oh, they don't have 10 printers, so I don't need to talk MPS here, or I'm completely not even including them, or they don't fit the 20 printer minimum, or whatever it might be. And we were walking in and doing MPS cold calls, from people that had 3 printers, 2 printers, 5 printers, and it was just, that was what we went after. And and it's very possible and achievable. So I'm going to give you guys what I did to make it happen, because these are things that we kept doing. More and more of the reps did, because they saw how achievable it was, and I know it's achievable for all of you too. So one of the things that that I had as a benefit to me is we had the infrastructure set up at our mega dealership, in California that I was in, that we had 4 main things that were set up. And so in this section, I'm going to talk to you about what are those 4 things that you absolutely must have set up. And if you don't have them set up, then it's hard to do MPS fast. And so that probably would be the first thing. So if you wanted to get your people going next week, you should be thinking, what do we have in place here? And if you do, great. Then then the next section will be even more valuable. But the first thing that you need in order to sell MPS fast is you need a cheat sheet. MPS, and it's the more and more times you do this out there, and you probably can challenge yourself to go do this because it's so easy, it's ridiculously easy, is you're signing a service contract. I mean, that's what it is. If you're just doing MPS. So you think about what the benefits of a service contract, there's no credit approval, right? I mean, you literally can just take the MPS, the service contract and fill it out on the spot. You technically could do that. So those old days when you and I started in sales in this industry, where you were doing deals on napkins and you were putting things together like that, you could actually do that with MPS. And that's what we did to do so many deals in such a short amount of time. But it wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have any sort of pricing cheat sheet. And so our company had this sort of thing set up. And I'm giving you an example of what one could look like. And I'm blurring out the numbers, the actual data of it. But there's certain things that you run into with MPS. And you need to have an answer for it at your dealership to know how your people can quickly do a quote or pricing for MPS. So think about your cheat sheet as, what are the rules for the sales team when you're doing MPS? And you'll see the first area over here, you've got existing local printers. You need to think about, what are you going to charge for local devices? Because when you're out there in the field, you're going to find some devices that they're barely being used, like at all. It might be in the boss's office, and they might do 5 prints a month on it. And then we might have been thinking, oh, we got to get this out of here because, I mean, it's local. We need it on the network. Look, if they're doing 5 prints a month on it, just add it to the contract as a local, no big deal. You need to figure out your pricing structure for that, and it really speeds things up. Then you need all your pricing set up for your network devices. And there's a lot of printers you're going to find, whether they're HP or Brother or Lexmark or whatever. Most of them are black and white. And so you need your volume for your volume ranges. So like if they're doing this select volume, this would be the amount that you would charge as an example. And something that you need to consider here is, this cheat sheet that you start with should be based upon your costs being 60 to 70% profit. Okay. So you shouldn't go in there and say, this is your internal costs. No, this is the cost that you give the salespeople. So this is the price that you give them to figure out the numbers. And what it might be, as an example, let's say they're doing under 10,000 black and white prints. Well, maybe you say, if they're doing under 10,000 black and white prints, and that's the first area right here, under 10,000, then you'd say that the rate that you use to calculate their cost, maybe it's 2.5 cents. So if you think about that could be, if it's 10,000, that could be $250 per month, as an example. And then that changes depending on the volume. Then you get color, because if there's color devices, you got to have the volume and then the black and white rate and the color rate. And again, that rate, you need to determine what rate you can put out there where you're making good money, because your salespeople are going to use this on the fly. And then the last part of it, there's premium color devices. And these color devices, there's some printers that cost quite a bit of money. And those printers, they have a lower cost per print because it's, they pay more for the printer and it's less for the toner. So you should know what those are and plan to put rules in place around those sort of things. Then there's other rules that you can have on this cheat sheet. Things like, maybe there's a certain brand that is more expensive to manage. Like maybe it's Lexmark or Brother, and you want to add service bases to those. So you should figure that out, right? And then you also need to think about the terms. And the terms for whether it's a 12-month contract or 24-month or a 36-month contract, we use the terms as a way to incentivize compensation for the reps. I mean, you think about it. If they're with you for 1 year, if you sign them up in a 12-month contract, they're going to be with you again. Like, they're not going to leave. I mean, think about how often people leave MPS providers as it is. That they don't. And so we don't really worry too much. The leadership team doesn't worry too much about what term they're on, but the salespeople, I mean, you should use that getting the customer to commit to a longer term as an incentive for salespeople to sign them up too. So we'd give them spiffs on comp. But I mean, those are all things that, obviously, I'm sure you have ideas on too, but this should be very easy to figure out. You look in the room, you see what printers they have, find out if it's black and white or color sort of things, and then find out the volume, right? And that's the key. That's where people make the biggest mistakes with learning how to sell MPS. They think MPS, there's only an MPS opportunity because of the number of printers. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It's all about volume. If they're doing a lot of volume, who cares how many printers they got? You want to make money on that, right? You want to make, HP's making plenty of money. They're laughing their way to the bank. You should make your cut of that in your region. And so make it easy to start with for the reps with a pricing cheat sheet. So from here, the second thing is you need some sort of data collection agent. And, we used FM Audit, we've used Print Fleet, we've used a bunch of different ones. And I'm sure, hopefully all of you have something like this that you can use. I remember back in the day, we used the rapid assessment key for those of you Xerox providers out there. We've been tracking prints forever. It's not a new thing, but you need something, because when you do that initial walkthrough of the account, you're going to see things like the local devices that they have that you want to look under cheat sheet and go, okay, that's this much cost and that's this much cost for a contract, right? And then when you add that what you see from the walkthroughs in with the data that you get from something like FM Audit, then what happens is now you have a better idea of their total volume, because that's so important for you to price out. But you need one of these tools for more than volume. You need to know how old the devices are, and you need to know if they're dogs. I mean, if you don't want to put a bad printer under contract, right? And people are replacing these things all day long. It's a normal thing, and you know that. People buy printers like they buy chicken from Costco. Right now, your customers, I bet you there's a big chunk of them that are going to Costco tonight, getting chicken for the week, and as they're pushing their carts through the aisle, they're dropping in a couple HP printers too as they go by, because that's what it is. People are printing like crazy, and these printers break, and they need something in there, and you want to make sure that if you're managing it and taking that on your end, you just at least know what you probably should be replacing. But the other benefit, I know I'm going pretty fast here because obviously there's a lot more to go, a lot more to do in here. But the other thing to mention with some sort of data collection agent like FM Audit is when you really know how to use it right, and all of your salespeople need to learn how to use it right. There are reports in there that are so impressive, that are so valuable, and these reports, when the salespeople know how to interpret the reports, sometimes you can just show the customer the reports of their data, and it's enough to get them to go, wow, we have no clue how much we're spending. We're out of control. And can you manage this for us? Just the report that you can generate from FM Audit. So you need to become masters at that, because it'll help you make that faster sale. Okay, the third thing that you need in order to sell MPS fast, and that structure in the back end, is you need some sort of free printer program. And this is something that, again, is just such an absolute, such a valuable part of the whole thing. Because what happens is you're going to go in there and you're going to see printers that you don't want to manage at all, that are just awful. And what happens is your instinct, your natural instinct, when you see a fleet of HPs, is you're going to see these things and you're going to say, oh, if this one's broken, I'm going to replace it with what we sell, and we sell Sharp. Or, oh, I'm going to replace what we sell Epson, and Epsons are awesome. Or we sell Kyocera, so I'm going to replace it with Kyocera. But what happens when you introduce something that's different than what they already have is you open up objections. You want to fly under the radar with replacing what they have today. You want to keep it just no brainer. And it's so easy to talk about replacing a broken printer that they have with the same brand. Because you say, oh, hey, I know this one, you got these HPs that are broken over there. Instead of you going to Costco and dropping them in the cart this weekend, tell you what, I'm just going to give you the printers. Right? It's a whole lot easier conversation. I'm just going to give you some HPs. They'll be like, great, sounds good. Like there's no drama there whatsoever. Of course, there's a lot more to the free printer programs, but it comes across to the customer as that. It's just simple. There's no drama. And it can be refurbished printers. I would make sure that your dealership has set up some go-to free printer programs that you use in these situations, because almost every single deal you run into when you're out there doing MPS, there's things you want to replace and there's things that you don't want to keep. Perfect example is any sort of inkjet printer. If there's an HP inkjet, it costs a crazy amount. It just, I mean, those things were just given with someone buys a computer and they throw it into the computer, and they're the worst. I mean, you know that. So those inkjets should naturally just automatically be responded with some sort of free printer that you throw into the deal. And obviously you're going to make that money up really easily in MPS. So there's that. Now, I will give you some examples, with that one rep, since it was so fresh in my brain. We one of the deals that we were closing, we were at the end of the contract, we were at the end of the proposal phase, and I was meeting with the controller, and we had some of their machines on. We were obviously putting their printers under contract, and I was upgrading some of their Ricos to Xeroxes too. But I asked the controller, I said, "Hey, curious question. Are you guys planning on buying any printers, anytime soon?" I mean, that question itself is one that all your people should be asking every single customer, because it's true. So I said, "Hey, just quick question. Are you guys planning on buying any printers anytime soon?" And the controller looks at me and he says, "Literally after this meeting, I'm going to Costco to buy a couple printers." I said, "Why?" He says, "Oh, some of ours are broken, so we just need to replace them." And I said, "How much are those printers going to cost?" And he says, "I don't know, $200, $300, $400, something like that." I said, "Tell you what, why don't I just give you two printers, great printers, just very comparable to those, and you just use those $400 to, over the next 6 to 9 months, pay for service and support on those printers, and I'll just give them to you. What do you think?" And he goes, "Sounds great, throw it in." So then I added another 2 printers in the contract. The MPS deal obviously increased, and it's that simple to add it when you have some sort of free printer program available. So be considering that. The fourth thing is you need back-end contracts. And I mean, this one's probably one, if I were to guess, that most of you hopefully have done already, but you should be thinking of who are your remanufactured toner suppliers. So as an example, this isn't popping up here for some reason. Click, 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 click. Hang on. We go back into it. Here we go. Okay. One could be, you need a remanufactured toner provider. And because, I mean, these things, you're not going to be selling, obviously, OEM printer toner, because that's not going to be as profitable as the other ones. And when we were when I was at MRC, we used MSE, and they're a company in Glendora. They were a big remanufactured printer provider that we loved, and they were actually acquired by Clover. And I think something to make sure all your people understand when they're selling MPS and getting through the remanufactured conversation is to realize that, a company like Clover, they have a whole suite of options of remanufactured suppliers. So they've got ones that are really high quality, and obviously they got ones all the way down the spectrum that are really low quality. And you as the dealer owner, you have your choice of recommending, say, "Hey, I want to make sure we're using this type of remanufactured toner for our MPS deals." And it's your choice. So make sure you tell them that. And that way you can keep the highest quality remanufactured supplies going to your customers. That's the first thing that you need. You also need, let me go back in here. Come on. One more. You also need there we go, outsourced service provider. I'll put the last one in there too. So the outsourced service provider, just to get that understood, is your people, what you don't want happening when they're going into the field is for them to find this, this one location, and the customer tells them, "Oh yeah, but we have these other 3 locations too." And for your salesperson to say, "Oh, we can't support those over there. I mean, we can support you locally." No, you got to use some sort of outsourced service provider, and you got to lock that up front, because you want them to say, yeah, we can handle that. Doesn't matter wherever you are, we can support you. Because that way, anywhere, when they're putting ink on paper on any sort of network device, you're making those profits. And that requires a little bit of preparation up front with some sort of outsourced service provider. The last thing that you need is you need a MPS finance, some sort of contract provider, because as you sell more and more MPS deals at your dealership, because you're gonna be doing, when you start following these things, you're gonna be mixing a lot more deals with copiers too. And as that happens, you need to make sure that you have a provider that's really flexible when you sell MPS deals. And one that was always good to work with was Great America. But that's always a good choice. But I'm sure everyone's catching up by now. But you need to think about having a MPS type contract for them to use. Okay, so those are the four. Pricing cheat sheets, back-end contracts, FM audit, and free printer program. You need those four set up in order to start to be able to do MPS deals fast. Okay, let's look at the next thing. How can you find the low-hanging fruit? So let's say you got that set up at your dealership. And if obviously if there's any questions that come up throughout, make sure you put it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end. I know I'm going through this really fast, but still a lot more to talk about. So how can you find the low-hanging fruit once you have this set up at your dealership? Well, here's the first area that I would start. So I would mine the data in your data collection agent, whether it's FM Audit or Print Fleet or whatever, and just look at your top 50 accounts. That's one area that you can start. Now, the companies that are obviously the most happiest with you, they have printers. Don't kid yourself, they do. And you need to be thinking, if they love you guys so much, it's probably the easiest place to go to talk about MPS. And I will talk after this on how to build your case to get them excited about it. But on top of that, if after looking at your top 50 accounts and starting there, you can also search by volume. So look at all of your accounts inside of FM Audit by volume and sort obviously by most volume to least. And when you get there, you're going to see a couple different things. The first thing that I'd look at is look for customers that are printing 1,400 pages per month in color on their desktops. This could be on one device. It could be on a couple devices. I mean, 1,400 pages is not that much. And when you think about it, remember your cost that you're giving your salespeople, as an example, as one possible option, could be 14 cents for color. It could be lower, but I typically don't. I never liked keeping the cost for color for MPS to be anywhere in the ballpark of our MFPs, because then someone will say, well, I'll just get printers and then you won't be getting any revenue from your MFPs. So make sure there is a gap there. So let's just say it's at 14 cents, and your reps are pricing this out on the spot. They would find that they're getting just about $200 a month. They're getting $196 a month to manage a 1,400 volume color printer or color printers at one account. That's very low. And you're going to find when you actually mine the data and you start doing this, that you've got multiple accounts that have this. So that should be the one of the first places you go, because the number is obviously going to probably be a lot higher than $196 or $200 when you do that. That's also not the number that you're going to be presenting to the company. This is just you figuring out what your 60 to 70% profit margin cost would be at that place, just so you get an idea. And then we look at the next one, which is, let me close out of this. Come on. The next one, which is, it is black and white. So you're looking for customers printing 8,000 per month. 8,000 is the magic number for black and white. And that's on unmanaged desktops. So you got, again, let's say your 8,000 number. I know in my less than 10,000 example on the cheat sheet, I use 2.5 cents for black and white. So 8,000 at 2.5 cents, that's $200 a month. Again, that's a minimum. And that's one of the rules that we had at our company, where we try to not get it lower than that number, but you really could go any number that you wanted. But 8,000 volume, if you're talking about a collection of printers, doesn't need to be not necessarily just one. It could be 3 of them. That gets you right there at $200 a month, and that has 60 to 70% profit probably for you. So those are a couple places that you could start, but you got to make sure that you have this infrastructure set up that we talked about before. So the next thing I want to cover here is how can you present your case to create interest? Because it's not enough, as you know, just to have all these places to call. You need to know what you're going to do to say, what are you going to talk to them about? How can you get them to go after it? I mean, most of these companies are probably telling you right now, oh, we're good. We don't spend that much on our printers. Oh, we hardly use any volume, right? I'm sure you hear that all day long. But then HP, again, laughing their way to the bank, 13 billion in toner last year sales, right? So, and they only represent 50% of the market. So, they've got printers, and they're spending money, and that they're spending probably way more than they realize. So, how do you present your case? I'll give you a couple of different ways to do that. The first one is we start with realizing that printing costs are unmanaged. They've been unmanaged forever, and it really is. And so anytime someone tells you, oh, we hardly don't do any, we don't spend that much, you need to remember this, and your salespeople need to understand they have no clue. They don't. They really don't. Okay? And so we just need to find a way to explain that. And I'll give you an example that actually I found online, but it reminded me a lot of Rick Lamberts. I think Rick's on this call right now. And he's one of the best ever in this industry at teaching people how to do well. He trained me. And he has this one slide that he put out there that was toner ink costs more than human blood. And we use that forever because it is a shocking thing. And you need people to realize that really it does. How expensive is it really? And how much are we spending? Because no matter who you show that slide to, it's going to catch their attention. Here's another one that I found that is similar to Rick's, but Rick's is more designed for salespeople out there. This was just more of an article that I found online about how expensive it was. But let's just look at this. Chanel cologne. If you break it down into the cost into a gallon, it's $26,000. Okay, quite a bit. Cobra venom, $153,000 per gallon. Okay, that's on the high end. Toner's not going to be higher than that, I'm telling you. But here's human blood. Human blood, $1,500 per gallon. So, that's something to consider. You go, okay, if it's more than that, because Rick is out there teaching everybody amazingly how to do it right, and that it's more than $1,500 per gallon, then that's a shocker. What else we got? We got insulin. Insulin's $9,400 per gallon. Mercury, $3,400 per gallon. And here's the most expensive one. Scorpion venom is $39 million per gallon. I bet half of the people that are on the call right now are probably going to close their dealership and just go find some way to capture scorpions and get the venom out of it, because it seems like that's crazy money, right? We should really be in that business. But yeah, when it comes down to printer toner ink, $2,700 per gallon. This is something I found from last year. I don't know if it was updated. I actually forget what Rick's had on his, but yeah, the concept is there, that when you share something along the lines to shock these companies that are saying, oh yeah, we're not spending very much on our toners. We hardly even use our printers. Those people are the ones that really are spending a lot of money, and you got to shock them, and you got to get them to realize they have no clue, and they need someone to help them manage it. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to bring light to the many costs that come with printing. And you got the cost of the printer as it is. They know this. They go there and they buy it at the store, at Costco. There's the cost associated with toner, right? And just, which we've already spent a lot of time on today. But a lot of times when we approach MPS, we literally focus just on the toner, and we'll say, oh, we'll save you money in toner. But the idea is there's all of these other costs, and all these costs are things that we manage. The next thing is service. Service costs money. And if they actually want to spend the money on fixing a printer instead of buying a printer like the first one, then that's coming out of their pocket, right? That's extra costs associated on top of the toner, the $2,700 a gallon toner, right? And then we got inventory and the cost that comes with inventory. One of the things that we used to love doing at our company was taking a picture of their supply cabinet. And we'd use that as we try to justify these larger accounts, obviously, selling these big deals, these mega deals. But the funny thing about it is we would circle toner on their shelf like this that we knew they didn't even have a printer for anymore. And we'd say, hey, you spent money on this and you're never going to use it. It's just wasted money, which is called trapped inventory in the industry. But the idea is they thought they were doing something right because someone realized it was costing them a lot of money for all the toners, so they would buy in bulk. But then printers break, printers get broke, thrown away, and now that toner that they just splurged on to try to save money that they bought once or twice a year, they just literally wasted hundreds or thousands of dollars on for their company. And that's another cost. And there's the management of that cost. And then the last piece, and my screen keeps freezing up on me. So here we go, back to it again. The last piece is just the management that comes along the ways of supporting these accounts. So you'll see right here, this person, these are the guys that are troubleshooting, they're trying to fix people with all the little things going on with their printer. And that's a lot of things that your organization probably could do too as well, that your call center could help out. Or maybe if you even go into the managed services industry, that's something you probably can help there as well. So these are all the costs associated with printing. And the fact that they have no idea how much it is, those are things that you need to calculate because we're benchmarking, we're comparing the two. So then what I would do for these fast deals, the quicker deals here, is I would do quick comparisons, general estimates. So if you see at the top here, you got their general estimate cost. So that 8,000 black and white prints that we talked about all day. I wouldn't go in at, remember our cost that we talked about earlier was 2.5 cents, but you could easily sell 4 cents a page. We've always been selling that for years. You know that. And if that's the case, then you could say, hey, look, I noticed you got these 5 printers and you're doing 8,000 prints a month. I mean, you got to be spending between $300 and $400 a month in toner on that thing, right? And then you're basically bringing that up. And what are they going to say? They have no clue, right? They don't know. And so then your conversation, your transition could go into, hey, well, what if I could give you more value for what you're spending today? And you know that your costs obviously are $200 a month, and that's what you tell your salespeople, because you're really doing it at 60 to 70% profit there. But your salespeople could sell it at $300 a month, right? You could spiff them on selling it for higher, right? And they're still getting so much more value than what they're spending today for just toner. Same thing with color. Color, I used the 1,400 page example before, and you could easily use 25 cents a page for that too. And it's just, you've been doing it forever. It's a basic conversation. So same thing. Hey, noticing these printers, you're doing, 1,400 pages a month on them. I mean, you got to be spending between $300 and $400 a month just on toner, right? Those things are crazy expensive. What if I were to give you more value for what you're spending today? And obviously down here, you see your 14 cents is the cost that you give your salespeople to use. So they're doing it for at least $196, but they could do it for $300 a month. They could do it for the same amount because they're getting more value for what they're spending today. So that's another way that you can make these things go a lot faster because it's a no-brainer. The last part that you need to present your case for MPS is you got to summarize all the value of your MPS program. And I'll give you a couple examples over here on the side. You've got reporting, right? Today, they don't have any MPS. This is the customer today. So they have no way of measuring. They have no way of reporting. They have no way of, just seeing month over month, how much are they doing? Is it a lot? Is it a little? Should they be changing things? Can they control their costs? They have no way of doing that. With your program, they can. Now, obviously, they're styling when they do. Then there's auto shipping toner. You probably do that for whatever manufacturer you're supplying at your dealership. Well, you can do that with the HPs too. You can do that with anything they have an MPS too, right? You can sync that right up with with Clover or whoever you use as a remanufactured supplier, and those things go connect right into eAutomate. Boom, they're getting it. And that saves them obviously crazy amounts of time that it would take for them to get their own toner and source it and all that. And the last part, service parts, all those sort of things that come with it. They have no way of doing that today. Obviously, they're styling with your program. Something like this to summarize the quick value that they get for something that they're not even managing, have no clue about, will end up changing the way that that they see MPS and see this extra thing that you can sell. And this is what we did. This is what we did to get deals when there's nothing coming in. No matter what, any of your people on your team, all of them, every single month should be closing minimum 3 MPS deals. I mean, no lease agreement, right? No credit approval. They use a service contract. They go out there, they're quickly using the calculator, figuring out the volume, right? Putting something in front of them. Here's the value. You got your sheet behind it, talking about the unmanaged and giving them more value what they're already spending today. You'll be surprised at how many deals you end up getting, and how any of your reps should be doing those things every single month. So today we talked about how the big things on MPS that's really wrong, that it isn't done correctly, is the way that it's taught. And it's everyone's taught MPS and how to do MPS like you're going after this major account opportunity. And that's not the case. Like the majority of the places they're going to go after have less than 10 printers. Heck, there's probably 5 or less. And that doesn't mean there's no MPS deal. There's tons of MPS deals because people print a lot. People print, it's all about the volume, remember? So then we talked about the 4 things that you need. You got to have a cheat sheet set up, right? And I can help you with that if you need it. Or, just watch this again. Obviously the replay will be available for you as a BTA member. So watch the replay again and just think about all those areas that I talked about and put something together, just something to start with, structure and rules, so your salespeople can do something on the fly. And then you're going to need some sort of data collection agent like FM Audit, right? And you probably already do have one of those, but get one if you don't. Then you need a free printer program, right? You got to have some sort of thing set up where if there's a printer that you don't support, or that it's just, there's no reason why you should because it's way too expensive, you should be able to replace it in a no-brainer scenario where the customer's not having to learn about your Sharp product or your Kyocera product or your Canon printer or whatever it is. Just stay with what they already have. Make it so easy for them. And then you need contracts to do that, right? You need to make sure that you have all the systems set up with a remanufactured supplier connected to eAutomate if you have it. You need an outsourced service provider, and you need to have the MPS deals, because you're going to run into these MPS printer deals, and you're also going to find that, oh, they've got a copier there and they've had it forever and it's owned, and you'll get one of your MFPs in there too. When that happens, you need an MFP, an MPS finance provider that knows how to work with the same structure as MPS, and it's worth looking into. And then we talked about all the ways to present your case for MPS, along with how to go after the low hanging fruit. It's not more complicated than this, you guys. So where can you go for some more information? Because I did prepare some other things for you too as well. And where you can go is you can go to modernSalesTraining.com/BTA. And I basically made this page just for you. And you'll also have access to the PDF that Brent will share too. And on the PDF, all of these things are clickable too. So you can just go here and click it, or you go to my logo here and go to my website too as well. But on this BTA page that I made for you, you can download the presentation. That's the first thing. You can also, I made a copier sales training course for you, and it's basically a sneak peek of the 12 modules that I have out there that I have companies around the world using. And it's a sneak peek, and it's for BTA members, and you can literally have your whole sales force use it if you want. There's no limit to the number of people that can sign up. I would just recommend do it based on your company email address. So if you do reach out to me and say, hey, I want to see how many of my salespeople have actually finished this, then it's easier for me to search them by your company's email address when they do it. But yeah, check it out. It's about an hour and a half worth of training. That's free. It's for you. It's for BTA members. And then the last thing is I've got a checklist for mega dealers. That checklist that we used, as our company in California to do these MPS deals. Of course, those are the large ones. I've given you how to do everything else, but the large ones. But that's also there for you as well. And then lastly, I talk about my copier sales training program on that page too. But hey, I wish everybody luck with this, and I really appreciate your time. And I guess we can check to see if there's any questions. But that's about it. About it for me, Brent. Hopefully, I helped you guys make some more money and capture more revenue from HP.
Awesome job, Derek. Very good. Great presentation. It's great to hear all from your insight from your many years of experience and your guidance that you've shared before. I am looking at the Q&A. I do see a question that came up kind of early in the presentation. It said, what is the most effective way to switch pitch MPS after a different vendor has been providing it and raising the cost per page year after year, year over year? Maybe you're seeing that as well, Derek, in Q&A.
Okay, so let me just capture that again. I was just looking at the comments too at the same time. So what was it? One more time?
Okay, it says, what is the most effective way to switch pitch, in quote marks, MPS, after a different vendor has been providing it and raising the cost per page year over year?
Well, I think what it comes down to is, and that's a great question, by the way, because some companies do MPS, and I think something that you need to make sure your dealership has figured out is, what is your MPS value proposition? And for us, we had, like I showed you the glimpse of, the reporting and the service and the toner included, and the auto shipping toner, things like that. I mean, I had a whole list. We probably had 10 of them that we would use at our dealership because we figured out all the ways that we wanted to stand out with MPS. And so I think the first thing to consider if you go up against anyone that has MPS today is to realize that they're not all the same, and that someone thinks that if you just manage someone's printers, that's managed print services. But I mean, think about the title. You're managing it. So if you're managing it, that means you're bringing insights to the customer. That means you're actually becoming that partner of theirs that's providing all this extra value and data and insight that is about their business on a regular basis. And maybe your dealership has a regular quarterly review process, as an example, that you do this and you show that extra value. Well, I mean, keep in mind, no matter what, they're going to be saving money less. They're saving less money than they were before MPS. So the customer's not going to forget that. But it all comes down to value. Are you providing more value? And does your company have your own structure for this? Is how our MPS program works. And I would get that first. When you have that, you should find ways to creatively share that. This is how we handle our MPS customers and how we work with them, and that should be the way that you're able to stand out from the other MPS providers. So that's what I would say there.
Very good, Derek. Thank you for responding to the question. Attendees, if you've got questions, this is the time. You could type them into the Q&A and chat. I'm kind of watching both on the screen to see if anything pops up. While I'm waiting just for a moment, it's been mentioned that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available tomorrow on the BTA website. For you to access as a BTA member, you will have to have your username and password to get to the recording link. You will just go to bta.org/BMB archives. So BMB as in building my business. BTA's website, bta.org/BMB archives. While on the website, I would encourage you to go ahead and register for our next BTA Building My Business webinar. That webinar is going to be entitled, How to Internally Recruit High Performance Sales Talent in 2021. It will take place at 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, July the 9th. Our presenters will be Kate Kingston, you can see on the screen there, president and founder of Kingston Training Group, and Diane Waltemuth, who's CEO of Performance Now. So I'm not seeing any other questions. I will wanted to indicate, good comment there. Thanks for the good webinar from Greg Quirk. Thank you for that. I did want to mention that Derek is going to be presenting at our 2021 BTA National Conference, which is going to be August 18th and 19th at the Hotel del Coronado in Coronado, California. It's going to be on, are you onboarding your salespeople incorrectly? So there's a question for you, and he's going to provide the answer when we're in Coronado in August. So we're looking forward to that. I'm looking back at the chat. I do see a question that popped up. A couple of questions there from one individual. It says, how do you determine a prospect's volume on the first call? And then don't you need at least a week's worth of meters to get a volume?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, what happens when you start getting used to going after smaller accounts, first, just to address that, is you get used to asking other things like, how much paper do you use on a monthly basis? And you do that by cases of paper. So for instance, you say, how many cases of paper do you buy a month? Right? And a case of paper 8.5 by 11 is 5,000 sheets. Right? So you do the math, right? So if they're using one case, they're using 5,000 a month. And then you look at the number, what do they have in the office? If they've got 5 printers, as an example, and you know how much they're doing on your copier, if you have your own copier there, then you just back it out and you say, okay, well, they're doing the rest on the printers. And so that can at least get the conversation going. But one of the values of using something even like FM Audit is it will very quickly give you a estimated average monthly volume that they're doing on the account. And I mean, these places aren't massive. So if you wanted to raise the MPS, their allowance later, sure, right? It's not that big of a deal. You can always add to it. Some of these contracts are going to be a couple $100 a month. So it's not like you might be going from $200 a month contract to a $215 a month contract if you had the exact number. And you can always add that later on if you want. So I wouldn't get too lost in the volume, but if it's a large opportunity and it's large, that's when you just got to follow the normal steps. But you'll be surprised how complicated we make it, how too complicated we make it when we have those rules that we feel like we have to stick to. Okay, so the other question was, are you using flat, mono, and color rate regardless of the printer? Yes, we are, but it's all based on volume. So that's where we got to at our dealership. But of course, it's all based on how you set things up in the back end. And I would say that, you probably, even if you needed to, you probably could outsource a local printer, even if it's, let's say, like a Lexmark, and your people don't know how to service a Lexmark, you might as well send Barrister to the local account, and it's not going to happen that often. And so you really need to consider how much profit really there is in printing, and also how little they actually do get service. And you should be able to make it make sense. Just don't get in your own way with it. And so we like, having those percentages set up by volume, we usually give them the benefit of more volume, a little bit lower cost per page. And then the other thing on that was, if they're using Premier color printers, as an example, the ones that cost the most amount of money, we would give them a break on color for those, and black and white, because they cost less to support from our end. But you've got to be careful that you're not blending that across the fleet, because we would say something like, as an example, if they have one of those Premier color printers that get the better rates and everything else was the normal standard color printers, then what would happen is they would have to go with the standard rates. We couldn't let them use those premium extra rates. But on the other end, if they were doing a lot more, if they had quite a bit more number of printers that were premium, then we would let them blend the rate on the standard color printers with the premium color, if that makes sense. But again, it goes back to the rules. You got to have these rules in place to protect yourself and protect those margins.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Don't see any other questions at this time. Again, I wanted to say special thanks to Sales Chain for being the sponsor of today's webinar. So we greatly appreciate that. Sales Chain is a longtime member, supporter of the association, good friend of the association of the dealer channel. So check them out. As you exit the webinar today, you will see a brief survey pop up on the screen. It will take you all of about 1 minute to complete. I know Derek and I would greatly appreciate it if you would complete that survey, so we will have your feedback and know how we did today. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end our webinar today. We look forward to your participation in our next webinar. Again, that's July 9th with Kate Kingston and Diane Waltemuth. We thank you for your participation today. We thank you for your membership in the association. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the webinar and say goodbye for now. Bye all.
Bye.